Alright, today I'm going to be doing a joint review of the 3 giga coasters in the US. If you don't know, a giga coaster is a complete circuit roller coaster that is at least 300 foot tall or has a 300 foot drop. There's one in Canada and one in Japan, plus there's Red Force in Europe that some people don't think of as a giga. I had the opportunity to ride all 3 gigas in the US on my Coaster Odyssey this last summer, and I will be giving my thoughts and opinions on all 3. These are just my opinions based on my preferences and experiences, which can and will vary from person to person. I'll start off with the very first giga coaster ever made, and that is Millennium Force at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. This was built in the year 2000, made by the manufacturer Intamin, and it has won numerous awards for being the best steel coaster in the world. It has been very overhyped ever since its opening. I rode this for the first time in 2014. I kind of knew about the hype, yet it still far exceeded my expectations. I had never ridden anything like it before. I returned to Cedar Point this summer, expecting to be less impressed. After getting so much more coaster experience over the last 4 years, I didn't think I would think as much of Millennium Force this time. However, I was even more impressed with it. I think this is such a fantastic ride. It's not overrated as far as I'm concerned. It has a beautiful view of the lake, it has incredible speed, and it does have intensity. Many people will gray out on its first turn. I don't, but many people do. There are a few really great airtime moments on this as well, even though giga coasters aren't really made to have a ton of airtime moments. I love the one giant camelback hill that's almost 200 foot tall, and that one gives amazing sustained airtime. I got over 30 rides on this during my time at Cedar Point, including 10 night rides during the pass holder ride time on July 24th. This does give an awesome night ride, and the setting for this is so beautiful right along Lake Erie. And next up is Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion in Doswell, Virginia. This one was also made by Intamin, just like Millennium Force. This is one of the more intense rides ever made. Even more people will gray out on its first turn. I even found myself slightly graying out a few times. Now, some people will say that everyone will gray out every time, but that's not true. I talked to several people who say that they never do, but most people will at least slightly gray out. And if you don't know, graying out is when you start to lose your vision. Kind of starts with your peripheral vision. There's no danger or concerns about graying out, and it's not painful at all. At least it isn't for me. But it does scare some people, making them not want to re-ride Intimidator 305. Even some coaster enthusiasts will say that they can only ride this once an hour or a couple times a day. But for me, I rode it 44 times in 3 days, 24 times on the last day, and 10 of those were within the last hour of the day. This one also gives an amazing night ride. It also has a few airtime moments, just like Millennium Force, it keeps its speed really well throughout, all the way to the end. This one also has scenery to enhance the experience. Millennium has the lake, Intimidator 305 has the surrounding forest. Now, if you're here during the early spring, the trees might not be in bloom and it might not look so pretty. I was here in late July, and with the trees in full bloom, it was gorgeous looking out over a sea of trees from the top of this coaster. You see nothing but the green of the trees as far as the eye can see. And next up is going to be Fury 325 at Carowinds in Charlotte, North Carolina. This coaster crosses the border into South Carolina and then comes back. Now this giga, unlike the other two, was manufactured by B&M. I found Fury to not be quite as intense as the Intamin gigas, but it is still intense. It has even more airtime on it than the other two, and it has one of my favorite coaster moments of all time, the treble clef leading into the dive under the walkway. That is just amazing. And you do get some great airtime on that dive as well. In regards to speed, Fury is the fastest at 95 miles an hour. Intimidator 305 is about 90, and Millennium Force is about 93. Millennium and Fury are practically equal in length and duration, with Fury being a matter of a few feet longer in length. Intimidator 305 is certainly shorter, about 20 seconds shorter in duration if you count duration as the time you spend at high speeds. Now, for many people, Fury will be their favorite. It has won the Golden Ticket Award for Best Steel Coaster in the world for the last 3 years now. But for me, I actually prefer the two Intamin Gigas to Fury. And there are a few reasons for that. Some of it is just my personal preference. For example, I love the sensation of speed and intensity. All three do this really well, but the two Intamin Gigas, I think, do it better. Even though the Intamins are not as fast as Fury, they feel like they're going faster. Now, the reason for this is that they sit you lower to the track, while Fury elevates its riders. Sitting lower to the track will always make you feel like you're going faster than you are, so the Intamin Gigas feel faster than Fury. Sitting low to the track also enhances the intensity factor. B&M, the maker of Fury, likes to elevate its riders on most of their coaster models. And I'm not really sure why they do that. I have considered the possibility that they are trying to make their rides less intense so that it has more universal appeal. If that's the reason, I totally understand that. With more universal appeal and less intensity, that can make Fury the more popular ride. But for me personally, I like having the greater intensity and sensation of speed that you get with the Intamin Gigas. I also prefer the 2 across seating to the 4 across seating. Millennium and Intimidator 305 are 2 across, while Fury is 4 across. Just a personal preference. I like the 2 across better. Another reason that I prefer the Intamins is what I touched on earlier regarding the surrounding scenery. Some people don't care at all about surroundings. It does nothing for them. Either that or they try their best to disregard the surroundings. I think that's silly to intentionally try to ignore the surroundings. If something could make a coaster better for you, why are you trying to deny yourself that? But Millennium Force has the lake to enhance the ride, Intimidator 305 has the forest to enhance the ride, and Fury has a parking lot and a suburb. So Fury doesn't really get any help from the surroundings like the other two do. Now, my biggest reason that I prefer the Intamins, and I want to tread lightly here because this might be controversial, and that's because what I'm going to say sounds like an absolute fact, but many people have stated that they don't think this is the case. My biggest issue with Fury is that it is a rough coaster. It has an insanely extreme rattle to it, like that jackhammering feeling that you get on some old wooden coasters. However, many people online describe Fury as being butter smooth. It's very confusing, and I still don't know how some people can find it rough while others find it to be perfectly smooth. But I found it to be rough, while Millennium Force and Intimidator 305 are super smooth rides. Fury was very shaky and rattly to me. The manufacturer of Fury, B&M, has been known for having what we refer to as a B&M rattle. On most of the coasters that have this rattle, it's not too bad and doesn't take away from the experience. However, for me, Fury had by far and away the worst B&M rattle of any B&M I've ever ridden. It was so extreme that it actually hurt me a couple times. I had a couple very painful rides on Fury, and I couldn't wait for those rides to be over. Later in the day, I decided to give it another shot as I had the idea to lean forward in my seat to try to take the rattle off of my upper back. And that worked to alleviate the pain factor. I could still feel the intense rattle in my lower back, but it wasn't hurting me anymore. That allowed me to be able to enjoy Fury and the amazing experience that the ride truly does give. I finally was able to really enjoy Fury, but I still couldn't see how such a rough ride can be so loved by so many people. Was it possible that I was just there on a bad week? I don't think so, because Taylor from Coaster Studios was there on the same day as my first day there, and he said in his video that Fury is riding great, maybe better than ever. I thought that maybe some people are just simply not bothered by the rattle like I was, but now I'm thinking that some people actually cannot feel the rattle at all. I don't understand how anyone cannot feel it, but obviously many people somehow don't. Now, while I was in line for the Hypercoaster at Carowinds, there were two boys behind me. One just happened to bring up that he greatly preferred the Hyper to Fury because Fury was way too rough for him. But his friend didn't understand that. He didn't think Fury was rough at all, thought it was perfectly smooth. And they were on the exact same trains. After some of my rides, I would overhear other people also getting off the ride, some saying it was very shaky, while others were saying it was so smooth. It's something I can't quite figure out, and I still don't understand it. But for me, personally, Fury is a rough ride, but once I learned how to handle the roughness, I was okay with it, and I did enjoy it a lot. I even have it in my overall top 10, ranked ahead of great coasters like Outlaw Run, New Texas Giant, Goliath, and even Maverick. So I do really enjoy it, but even if Fury were a perfectly smooth ride, I still think that I would prefer the Intamin Gigas for the other reasons that I mentioned here. The speed sensation, the intensity, and the scenery. So, now that I kind of went through why I like the two Intamins better than Fury, question is, which of the two Intamins are my favorite? Now that's a tough one because Intimidator 305 is easily more intense than Millennium Force, and I do love that, but Millennium is also a longer ride. Now Intimidator 305 was made to be a shorter ride, probably thinking that it's too intense to make it as long as Millennium. In the end, I have to say that I prefer the scenery of the lake, Millennium, to the scenery of the forest, and I do like a long ride. So with that, Millennium Force is the winner of the Giga Coasters for me. And I also do have quite the soft spot for Millennium, with it being the first Giga that I rode. And it was an incredible experience back in 2014, and it was a great experience this year as well. So Millennium Force is my overall third favorite coaster. Intimidator 305 is my number 7, and Fury is my number 8. But there's a big gap between 7 and 8 for me. My top 7 coasters are in a league of their own. But in the end, it is all up to each individual. Whichever one of the 3 you prefer is totally fine. We don't all have to agree, nor do we need to be offended that someone's favorite Giga might be our least favorite, or vice versa. These were just simply my thoughts on the 3 Giga coasters in the United States. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.